and we link to the project webpage. Microsoft Teams does offer a live captioning service. You can find that by clicking on the two dots and choosing Turn on Live Captions. And I will share my screen. The presentation. Okie doke. So we're going to be talking about Ellenwood Drive here in Providence District. And also, before I begin, Supervisor Polchak, would you like to say a few words before we begin?
Sure, Zach. Just very briefly, want to thank you, Lauren, and everyone attending tonight for your quick participation. I know we can't always estimate when some of the repavings come along due to the changes in snow schedules and others. So I appreciate you and staff scrambling to try to get working collaboratively with VDOT on this before they go ahead and repave. And I want to thank the community for joining us for this quick public turnaround meeting and look forward to the presentation and the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Our agenda tonight, we're going to talk about proposed striping modifications, and we're going to do questions and answers. And one of the reasons we're here tonight is because VDOT, Virginia Department of Transportation, which owns Ellenwood Drive, created an off-season paving schedule to take advantage of the warmer weather, as I'm sure we've all been enjoying. But unfortunately, as a result, this project came up much quicker than what we realized. And so that's what we're coming to now on relatively short notice with a relatively short comment period compared to how we would usually proceed. So we're only proposing striping modifications. That's within the scope of the repaving program. So the reason we can do this is because this is a collaboration between the Virginia Department of Transportation and Fairfax County Department of Transportation. We review paving plans to look for opportunities for improvements, primarily new crosswalks, occasionally shoulders and medians, as well as bike lanes and bus stops where appropriate. Our VDOT colleagues develop the plans and actually do the implementation. We lead the public engagement. That's why we're here tonight, as well as coordinate with our elected officials, our district supervisors. We also look for potential crosswalks, potentially busy locations that don't currently have crosswalk markings, to see if they'll meet the requirements that our state requires us to meet in order to install a safe crosswalk. We look to see if some parking restrictions are needed. We do try to upgrade some existing crosswalk striping from standard, which you might see are just two lines across the street, to high vis, which often looks like piano bars, as you can see in the photo on the right. We also identify key crosswalks for future enhancements, such as pedestrian refuge islands. We also try to take advantage of some underutilized road space. Many streets in Fairfax County were built with much wider travel lanes or too many travel lanes, which would lead to safety issues such as speeding. Repaving provides an opportunity to right-size the travel lanes and provide new bike lanes at very little cost to us as taxpayers. We generally try to keep the traffic signals at the end of the streets the same. We do try to maintain some of the legal street parking that's maintained. And so in addition, so this is Ellenwood Drive. It runs between Route 29 and Arlington Boulevard. And there's townhouses on both sides, as well as the Pan Am Shopping Center, and the the Vienna Metro is up about 1.5 miles away. So Ellenwood Drive right now looks like similar to the image on the right. There's two very wide travel lanes. There's parking on both sides, and there's sidewalks on both sides. Unfortunately, there aren't any bicycle facilities at the moment, but there is a nice little trail that's going to be that connects at the south end of the project, as well as a trail connection that's currently being built at the north end of the project. So if you get on Ellenwood Drive, you'll be able to go from either end and connect to some new trails in Armistead Park. So what we're proposing is throughout the project between Route 29 and Arlington Boulevard, We'd like to add bike lanes by narrowing the travel lanes. Most of the legal street parking will remain as part of this proposal. We are proposing removing some spaces in order to provide sight lines for crosswalks, which we'll get into in just a minute. So one of those locations is here at the intersection of Route 29. You can see there's an existing crosswalk that we're going to try to upgrade to high visibility. And there's 2 parking spaces that will remove to improve visibility of people using that space. And those spaces are marked in yellow on the right. In the middle of the street, we're proposing at the corner of Jersey Drive and Ellenwood Drive, we're proposing adding a new crosswalk. But as you can see, due to the kind of the curve of the road and whatnot, we have to repurpose a bit more parking than we usually would. So it would be 1 space on the southbound side of the street, and then approximately 10 spaces on the northbound side. And we need to have that space available so that people driving can see people using the crosswalk and vice versa, and stop for pedestrians as warranted. And then the last space that we're proposing to repurpose is down here at the corner of Arlington Boulevard Service Road. We would propose removing approximately 8 spaces in order to provide the sight distance necessary so that people using the crosswalk can be seen by drivers, and people using the crosswalk can also see people coming. If you'd like to provide feedback, you're welcome to provide any paving comments back to VDOT, such as drainage issues, missing signage, signal repair, walkway repair, any site distance issues related to vegetation growth. You can go to myvdot.virginia.gov, or you can call the phone number in the slide here. We also accept striping-related comments submitted directly to us via this link or DOT bicycle programs at fairfaxcounty.gov. And unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, at the moment, our current comment deadline is March 3rd at noon. We're trying to get that extended, but we don't have a yes or no whether we can do that at the moment. So this is the current deadline. And here's so now we're going to move to the questions and comments. So again, if you'd like to email us your feedback, our email is listed there. You can also mail it to us, but we do need it by Friday. So, and you can also feel free to give us a call at the phone number below. To ask a question, please use the reactions and raise your hand feature at the top of the screen, and we will call on you and have you unmute your mic. I'm going to share my screen for now.
Great, so we have a question coming from Chris French. I will unmute you, and then you can also unmute yourself. We're not hearing you, Chris. I'm not sure why that might be. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and maybe now. Can you try now? No, I'm still not hearing you. I'm going to go ahead and mute you for right now, and we'll try to come back in a moment. And I'm going to go to Kate. So Kate, now you can unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Kate. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you, Kate.
Yes.
Woohoo! Okay. This is the first thing. First, thank you for proposing these improvements. Long overdue. I'm probably the person who's most affected because I've been biking and walking along Ellenwood Drive for over 20 years. I guess there's some concerns from cyclists or people who are using handlebars, as I like to say, that there's a door zone. There's a door zone, even if we have the bike lane or not. I love the crosswalks, by the way, sorely needed. I think it will at least give some visual cues and maybe some calming and slowing to the people with steering wheels. On for the people with handlebars in the bike lanes, I guess, has anyone studied what's called an edge lane? And Zach, you and I had a little email ping pong, I think yesterday, on having, parking lane against the curb, 2-3 feet, and then bike lane next to that. It's called edge lane design, I think is the proper terminology. Is there enough room to give cyclists, the handlebar people, a little more distance from driver's side doors that may open into the motorized travel lane? I guess that's really my question. Has that been studied?
So the short answer is we can't do edge lanes or advisory bike lanes because our state DOT doesn't currently allow them. I certainly understand the concern about the dooring issue. I've heard from a couple people about that. What we think in Ellenwood Drive, and you live there, so you can enlighten me a little bit too. Since the parking turnover is low, meaning people aren't constantly multiple times in the same space opening their doors like they would in front of, like, say, a coffee shop.
Yeah.
We think that the risk is generally lower than what it would be in some of those cases. It's not zero, but this is what fits in our state DOT's parameters and what we can do within the space.
I understand. I'm sorry. Did you say that it's a state kind of VDOT constraint on edge lane design?
Yes.
Okay.
And then also too, this might be a little bit too wide for the edge lanes. Typically, edge lanes are pretty are generally used on smaller streets that forces cars to share. But here we can get the bike lanes and the travel lanes, and we don't really have to force anyone to share.
Okay.
So that's the
I
other
guess,
reason.
a workaround, and I know I'm reaching for the stars with a big strategic thing, but if we had better education around what's called the Dutch reach, whereby the driver would use their right hand and be forced to look over their shoulder before opening a car door, that would go a long way. So I hope, strategically, again, I know I'm reaching for the stars, but if we could get more of that
Thank you.
in our brains.
Yeah, thank you very much
and maybe
for the
that's
comment.
something for Fairfax County DOT and VDOT, and the world. Really, I think the world needs it. So,
Having been doored myself, yes, I very much would love that to become the standard. Thank you for your comment.
sure.
Thank you, Kate. I'm going to go ahead to Miss Rebecca. Let me see if I can unmute you, Rebecca. All right, now you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
All right. I have two questions. The first one I hope is a stupid question. In your presentation as example roads, you showed like Wolf Trap or something, which is much wider than Ellenwood. And then in your diagram of the bike lane, the cars, the narrow travel lanes, your icons were really little. I am assuming you have measured Ellenwood and made sure that it will accommodate the normal size cars and vehicles, not all cars, some vans and things, including a school bus that you see out there, as well as the bike lanes, as well as adequate travel lanes.
Yes.
Okay, as I said, I hoped it was a stupid question. Didn't go out there with my own tape measure. So I know you don't have a lot of control over this, but is the paving going to happen first while you're still gathering comments on the proposal, or will the markings for the new travel lanes happen right at the same time or right after the pavement?
Generally, we don't like to leave unmarked pavement, so it would probably happen pretty shortly after the old pavements removed and the new pavements put down.
Okay, and do you have any update on when the paving is happening? The signs went up and it's been 2 weeks or a week and a half and still no activity. And I think the window, does it close on the 3rd? Is that what the sign says, the paving window? And does that even mean anything?
Well, I did see that FCDOT marked a few spots.
Okay, so do we know? Do
We
you
don't
guys-
have,
Okay,
so the best information that you would have is if you have the signs out in the street. And the last that I had heard, and then, it was no parking on the street between the 3rd and the 13th.
right. And people were getting frustrated because they expected paving would start and they're kind of gambling with parking out there anyway. Okay, so we just have to trust what the sign says. You're still fair game to the
Yes.
13th. Okay.
Yeah, and sorry about the extended window. That was and part of the reason is because of this project.
Okay.
I do apologize for that.
Well, no, and I kind of get it. It gives you the flexibility too. When the weather's good and they can come out and pave. So, okay, those were my questions. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to the phone. We have someone calling from last 4 digits 0454. So I will allow your mic and then you have to unmute. Is it *6, Zach? *5? One of the two. Hopefully you saw the instructions at the beginning.
I think it
Okay, I'll
starts
see you.
switching teams.
Thank you.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Wonderful. This is Sean Newman. I am a representative of Fairfax Alliance for Better Bicycling, FAB. We have some reservations about this specific facility application. We are very supportive of the effort by FCDOT to, right size the travel lanes during these repaving operations. It makes a lot of sense, and it is a very low cost way to, help calm some of the traffic and to add bike lanes where those are available or are appropriate. During the last several years with this program, we know that we have gotten lots and lots of miles of bike lanes in Fairfax County for very, very low dollar amounts, and although sometimes with significant public pushback, unfortunately. However, of the bike lanes that we have gotten in the county, there are some that are excellent. There are buffered bike lanes. There are some bike lanes that are very appropriate and work really well for the situation. There are some that are, sort of mediocre, and there are a few that are really hard to use and make it so that cyclists feel like they should be biking in the bike lane, and the drivers feel the same way. And so cyclists tend to get a bit of a hard time if they are not cycling in that bike lane, and it kind of puts them in a bad position. And we are very concerned that this specific facility will be one of those that is less optimal. We're really concerned about dooring, the hazard of dooring. And I know that I personally, when I ride in bike lanes similar to this one, I will ride toward the left-hand side of the bike lane. And when you're riding in the left-hand side of the bike lane, that puts the vehicle traffic very close to you. And in a situation like this, I would, even though it is legally required, I find it highly doubtful that most drivers will actually give you, will change lanes to pass as they are legally required to do so, if there's room, which there is in this case. And so our big concern is that we're going to end up with a bike lane that kind of makes cyclists feel like they are forced into using it, and then they won't because it's an uncomfortable bike lane. And then it increases the idea that, oh, we're building all these bike lanes and the bicyclists aren't using it. And that results in, a bad look for bicyclists. It results in bicyclists not feeling like they have a safer place to ride. And it results in, just unfortunately, a waste of that space. So in this specific instance, we, Fairfax Alliance for Better Bicycling, do not support adding the bike lanes in this case. We do support the goal of putting in the road diet. If there are other ways to do that, whether it's, just adding lines adding the lines that you would add for the bike lane, but not adding bike lane symbols, so that it doesn't feel like bicyclists are forced to ride in that space. That would still, have the visual cue of shrinking the road, but would enable bicyclists to ride in the main lane if they prefer, and go into into that other lane as an off ramp sort of. Or that's one option would be to line it but not put in the bike lane markings. Another possibility that we think would be appropriate in this case, which I know that the county has used in other locations, is to not have any lines at all, and kind of use the idea of having no lines makes drivers inherently drive more slowly and more cautiously. This already has a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. We like that you're putting in the crosswalks here, but we have concerns about adding in the bike lanes, and we feel like this will be a less optimal location for bike lanes. At the end of my comments.
Do you have a question or just comment?
Mainly just comment. Is it? I guess the question would be: is it possible to adjust the proposal to either of the two that I have just suggested?
So the first one, doing bike lane lines without the bike lanes, I don't believe so. It's not compliant with the markings that the VDOT approves for roads, and therefore they wouldn't want to put it down because they would be subject to tort liability. And the second option, to remove the center line and not have any bike lanes at all, you'd have a 30-foot wide shared space. And I think the concern, instead of having what we're proposing is two 10-foot lanes for people to drive in, we think that would be a better traffic calming method than having a 30-foot wide open space that people drive in. Because right now people have about a 15-foot wide space, and we see a little bit of speeding there. So it would be having a little bit narrower space for people to drive in would slow people down and kind of address some of the other concerns you had about dooring and whatnot, and safe passing.
Yeah, we certainly appreciate the idea of the road diet and slowing people down with that. Again, the concern is just that if this ends up having the bike lane as planned, it puts cyclists in a really uncomfortable position of really threading that line between the doors and the vehicles. I know I ride on other streets that are low turnover parking, and I don't like even on those streets that are low turnover parking, especially if this one has some curves to it. It can be really hard to see whether there's somebody getting in their car up ahead. And I tend to ride a fair distance from the parked vehicles for that reason. And I think I'm not alone in that. And so putting these bike lanes in as planned would, I think, result in an uncomfortable bicycling experience, and would not be encouraging of people who feel like they would like a more comfortable, more protected bicycling experience. It doesn't get additional people out on their bikes, especially those who might be using these new trails that are on either end of this road.
Thank you very much for your comment, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah.
We're gonna go over to Chris French again. Chris, can you unmute yourself now and give it a try?
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry for earlier. Thank you. Yeah, I have a couple comments, a couple questions. I'll just ask them all at once if that's okay. So the first one is about the intersection at the north end of Ellenwood where it meets 29 and the service road. It doesn't appear that the proposal would involve upgrading either of the two current crosswalks to include high-vis striping. That's the first question, I guess. And then I was also wondering if FCDOT had worked with VDOT to perhaps look at the pedestrian signal phasing at that intersection. These improvements, which I support, will, hopefully, along with the other bike ped improvements along Route 50, will hopefully increase usage of Ellenwood for, active transportation. But all those people are going to end up at this intersection. So I'm a little disappointed that the proposal doesn't seem to have taken into account improvements at the intersection. So I guess I'd like to hear about that. And then I'll ask another question, which is about the south end. So it looks like there's a new crosswalk that would connect the Armistead Park Trail to the sidewalk along the Route 50 service road. That seems like a good idea. But I didn't see that there would be a stop sign installed prior at that crosswalk and a stop bar prior to the crosswalk, which would of course stop drivers, people driving southbound towards that crosswalk and through that crosswalk as they approach Route 50. I don't even think there's a stop sign at Route 50. So I'm just curious if you could speak a little bit more about how the proposal would address the north and southbound sections, because it doesn't appear that those things that I suggested are being considered.
Thanks, Chris. I can go ahead and try to tackle this one. So at the northern segment at Route 29, there are existing crosswalks, as you mentioned, at the back of Service Drive and across the Service Drive. And then there are 2 legs covered at the signalized intersection. VDOT does have a project through a separate initiative. They have a highway safety improvement program that's federally funded. They're calling it their VDOT safety investment plan. And one of the components of that is pedestrian crossings at signalized intersections along pedestrian safety action plan corridors. And this is one of the intersections. It's planned and funded. Engineering is underway, so the design is underway on it. However, I don't know the details of the scope, so I would like to review that. And if you want to follow up with an email, I can get back to you because we're not in the details on those projects. I know that the primary goal of them is to add audible pedestrian signals to those crossings that are existing, but we're also working with VDOT to try to get them to add new crosswalks wherever they're missing. This one poses a problem because it would block the only storage right at the intersection. So I'm not sure for the south leg, but that's sort of another detail. But for the high visibility crosswalks, Zach, do you know if we're proposing at least the one across Ellenwood to be made high visibility?
I'm going to ask. I
Okay,
saw your
we're gonna
question
ask.
earlier, Chris. So yes, I will try to get that one in there.
The stop sign, the Service Drive crossing, the new VDOT policy does not allow high visibility crosswalks across stop controlled approaches. So that one would not be able to be changed. So, but we can see what we can do about the one across Ellenwood. And then at the south side.
I'm sorry. Could you say that? I didn't understand what you said there about what VDOT
so
doesn't
if there's
allow.
if there's a crosswalk crossing and approach to an intersection or any location that's controlled by a stop sign, so like where all the drivers have to stop before the crosswalk, their new guidance does not indicate high visibility crosswalks. The good news about that new guidance is it does support high visibility crosswalks at all crossings across uncontrolled locations. So no stop, no signal, no pedestrian hybrid beacon. So if it's not no yield, I guess, if you had like some sort of bizarre yield case at a rural road or something, but at all uncontrolled locations. So that does make it easier across many streets for us to add high visibility, but it does pose a challenge wherever there's a always stop or a 2-way stop, getting those side street crossings to be high vis. Down at Arlington, maybe I'll let Zach take this one. Do you know if they're adding a stop bar? I would agree that would be a good treatment down there. Or at Route 50.
I don't. I think I might have seen it, but I think our project ends right there, so I have to. We'll ask and see if there's going to be adding one.
Yeah, so we can request that. There would not likely be anything at the crosswalk location though. Just the crosswalk.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for those explanations. And I'll follow up with you, Lauren, about the VSP stuff. I would like to learn more about that. And I'm going to throw out one last quick question, then I'll let other people go. One of the slides states, quote, the Route 29 service road will be repurposed. Can someone explain what that means? I didn't hear that explained. I don't know what that means. Thanks.
Let's see here. Parking adjacent to the Route 29 service road. So if you're going up at the north end of Ellenwood, we're proposing removing 2 parking spaces make the crosswalk that you're asking to be marked high vis. We're proposing to remove 2 parking spaces to make people using that crosswalk more visible.
Okay.
Nothing's
Okay.
happening with the actual service road. So,
Okay. Thank you very much.
of course, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. We're gonna go ahead to Mr. Al. I'm gonna allow your mic.
Yep, thank you for the presentation and everything. I just have 2 questions. I couldn't see from the presentation how the bike lane integrates with the turning lanes at the Lee Highway and Arlington Boulevard. Would the bike lane be split? Would it be sandwiched in between the right turn lane and the left turn lanes? How would that work for those 2 sections? And my second question is, I saw that the bike lanes would be about 5 foot. I'm not really sure how Fairfax County decides the bike widths. Do they base off a specific standard of bike? Do these bike widths support bikes that pull cargo? Because I've been seeing a lot more of those kinds of bikes become popular. So I was just curious, like, does this support that? Thank you.
So the answer to your first question, what does the bike lane do at the intersection of Route 29 and Ellenwood? At the moment, the northbound bike lane going into the intersection will end, and you'll have a shared facility to get to the intersection. And then regarding your second question about the 5 foot width, 5 foot is generally the standard that we try to use. Based on the measures like you described, having a handlebar width, it's pretty widely used all across the U.S. If we had a little bit more space, I'd try to get it a little bit bigger, but I think we don't have enough space to have the 10-foot the standard width travel lane, and then the bike lane. This is pretty much as big as we can get, and the other lanes are as small as they can get.
Okay, follow-up question to the first question I asked. So at those intersections, you said that they're going to become shared, like the lanes are going to merge, the bike lanes going to merge into, I guess, with the regular car traffic. Is that merge going to be like seamless, or is it going to be kind of like an abrupt end on the bike lane, and then the bike lane is going to have to kind of like try to zipper lane in with the car traffic?
There'll be a sign that says bike lane ends, and there'll be some dash marks to show that it starts to end. It's pretty common throughout a lot of the county. I'm sure you can find some examples, or if you send an email, I can send you some as well. It'll be pretty short too. It's not going to be a very long space that you'd have to share.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna go on to, let's see, next is Rebecca. Rebecca, we already heard from you, right? Let's take a moment and go back to Bruce. Thank you. We'll come back to you at the end.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. And a big thanks to all that FCDOT and VDOT have done with the paving program in the past 5 years. We've had a number of really good bike facilities over the years. We've had a number, as Sean pointed out, that were not so great. There's a couple of examples, but before that, I just wanted to have a shout out to Kate. We should probably all listen to her since she's been riding this road for 20 years, and appreciating her comments about possibly using the edge lane bike lanes, and the idea about the Dutch reach that no one knows about in this country, but it's a way of turning around, so you have to see whether there's a cyclist coming behind you. 2 examples that are very similar to this that happened in the past are on Ridge Heights, and actually there was one of the slides shows the example of Ridge Heights, and that's the slide with the school bus. And you can see that school bus is kind of right up against the bike lane. And one day I was riding in the direction facing that image, and I was coming from the far distance toward the school bus, and another school bus, because there's 3 schools right in that area, was passing me. And so I moved a little bit out, because even though that bus doesn't have a door, it's taking up too much room, and I couldn't comfortably stay in that bike lane. And that bus driver almost hit me. And so I followed the bus driver, because he turned into Langston Hughes, and asked him why he almost hit me. And he said, well, I was in the lane, you were in the bike lane. And I said, well, you're supposed to give me 3 feet. And he didn't understand that. And it's one of the big problems with having tight bike lanes like these, is that motorists don't really understand that even though there's a bike lane, they need to give you 3 feet regardless of where you're riding. Another problem with having bike lanes on a really wide road like this, where there may not be a lot of parking, is that when there's no parking, you ride in the bike lane, whereas if there were no striping at all, you could ride further to the edge to give motorists a little bit more traffic. Having 10-foot bike lanes is great, because it does help slow traffic, but there is a downside. The other example is Glade Drive in Reston, and that's very wide. I don't know if it's comparable to Ellenwood, but FAB wanted some reduction in the parking and bike lanes, and there was no reduction in the parking and no bike lanes, because I don't know whether it was because we didn't support it, or the county didn't think there was enough room. It seemed like there was, but there are now sharrows there. And the sharrows, where there's many stretches of not much parking. If you're riding in where you're supposed to at the apex of the sharrow, you're kind of out there in the middle of the road, whereas you could be more comfortably to the outside. So us opposing these bike lanes was a very tough decision for us. We've supported, like this Ridge Heights example, door zone bike lanes in the past, and it's because we had no bike lanes and we wanted some bike lanes out there, but we think this one might not be appropriate. And then the last comment or question, and I don't know if there's any VDOT reps here. I noticed there were several other panelists here, but it's regarding on-street parking. And I know VDOT's responsible for our roads, for moving traffic. I just wonder what their policy is on parking, whether this is free car storage in the public space, where most of these units, I assume if they adhere to county regulations, have sufficient parking for residents. And obviously there's many times when that doesn't work, but having dedicated parking on both lanes is a lot of space just for parked cars. So I'm wondering what VDOT's policy is regarding parking.
I don't have an answer what exactly VDOT's policy is, but you've asked me the question, and now I have to ask them if they have a formal written policy or not.
Is there a VDOT rep at the meeting today?
No, there's not one on the meeting today. It was a very short notice. This landed on my desk less than 2 weeks ago, so I do apologize that there's a lot that has happened to make this happen.
We understand.
But I will ask that question.
Thank you. It was very short notice for us. So anyway, thanks for the opportunity to comment.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. All right, we're going to go back to Rebecca.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. My original question had been concerns about width, just thinking of it in my mind, driving it and biking it. And the reps from the bike groups have raised a lot of issues that I agree with, and had been the source of, as the first one said, being uncomfortable for bike riders. Ellenwood has a lot of curves, and even with the visibility improvements, it's still dangerous, especially when you stacked parking, biking, and driving. And human nature seems to be to race cars down between the 2 main streets. So I will say, when I bike, I just move to the middle of the lane there, because between the cars opening doors, people stepping out, and the lack of visibility on the curves, I don't feel comfortable pressed up against the cars, and I would feel really uncomfortable if I was forced to by the bike lane, especially since the last speaker said, which I know, most people don't know you're supposed to give cyclists 3 feet of space. So I have another stupid question. Is there any other accommodation to indicate a shared travel lane for cars and bikes without creating separate lanes for each? Like kind of a warning that it will be shared. And then I have another question after this. So is there an answer to that first?
So we're only proposing that bikes and cars share the lane pretty much at the ends of the facility. So that would be at the Route 29 intersection,
Right.
the bike lane will end, and you'll have to share for a short distance to get through the intersection.
I understand what you're proposing, and what I'm saying is I agree that having a travel lane, a car lane, and a bike lane is pretty tight and uncomfortable for cyclists who are in that bike lane when they're only getting 6 feet clearance from the cars that may be passing them. So I don't even know if there's such a thing as a shared bike car lane. I mean, right now that's effectively what we do, but cars may not know that, you know, this is a designated bike area. Is there such a thing as that? Or am I just inventing something?
I think you're asking a similar question to what Kate had asked at the beginning of the meeting. Could we do advisory bike lanes or edge lane bike lanes?
Okay, yeah, all
and-
right, maybe it is.
Yeah, and
Zach,
unfortunately,
can I
the
also
answer
just-
is no,
Okay,
Can I just jump
that
in?
we can't at the moment. Go ahead,
all
Lauren.
right.
Rebecca, like you said, all of the lanes in the county are shared lanes.
Right,
So there is one tool, well, there are a couple tools, there are some signs. There are signs that say bike may use full lane. There are signs that say share the road. They're typically seen as not very effective in, really providing any type of facility for a bicyclist. It's just adding a little bit of additional information for the drivers and the cyclists. There's also a shared lane marking. We use those to it's a marking on the street that tells the bicyclist where to ride and alerts the driver that bicyclists might be on this road. We typically only use those when we're connecting segments of bike lanes that are discontinuous at some point, and we need to guide the bicyclist where to travel through that discontinuous segment. But otherwise, we don't use them on every road because every road is a shared bike vehicle lane, and every sidewalk is a shared bike pedestrian facility as well.
okay. And I actually, as a cyclist, feel safer with that. And what you just said about this being a connector between some bike paths that are bike only, isn't this a bit of that? Because as you've noted, there are bike paths coming in just a little further down on Route 50 and right there at the entrance to Ellenwood. So essentially people who are in the dedicated paths, now they have to share it before they get up to Route 29. Where I don't know what's going to happen there with the new development, if there will be another dedicated path. So it does kind of fall into that category a little, doesn't it?
Yeah, sorry, when I said that, I meant more of a shorter segment. So we'd be thinking like a couple 100 feet of length where we are connecting two bike lanes on the same roadway.
All right, I kind of get it, but I do share, I share those concerns about it maybe ending up being more dangerous for cyclists to be confined to that lane and for motorists to think they can sideswipe you because you will be safely in your lane. Anyways, one other thing I wanted to address as president of the Homeowners Association, someone had questioned, well, can't people park somewhere else? Actually, many of the homes on Ellenwood do not have parking in the community. Their designated parking is street parking on Ellenwood. So to remove the street parking or to reduce it to one lane would be a strain on the community parking.
Thank you for your comment and question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and open the comments from Yolanda. You'll need to unmute your mic. Okay, I'm not hearing anything, unfortunately. We can come back to you. We have a number, a phone. Oh, looks like maybe the question went away. I'm going to allow the mic anyway. And oh yeah, we're back. Okay. This is for 9271. Nine two seven one. Okay, maybe that person doesn't have a comment. Yolanda, do you want to try again? Unmuting yourself.
And then if you can't answer your question tonight, please feel free to email us at dotinfo or dotbicycleinfo@fairfaxcounty.gov. And you can also give me a call at the phone number there. They'll send that right to my phone. Should you wish to ask a question that way.
Not hearing anyone. Are there any other questions? Okay, back to Chris French. All right, Chris, you can unmute your mic now.
Okay, thanks. Since the other questions seem like they've been answered, I was hoping somebody could tell me how I could find out about striping plans for Providence District paving projects that are currently underway along Blake Lane. There's paving that's just happened on Edgeley Road, Platten Road, Five Oaks Drive, and some other streets. Platten Drive is going to be a connector for the Blake Lane corridor to the new I-66 trail. Five Oaks, of course, is a key connecting route from Blake Lane to the Vienna Metro station. So both, I think, are ripe for bike ped striping improvements, but those projects are in progress, and I don't think the public has had an opportunity to comment on striping plans. And that may be because there aren't any changes being proposed, but I'm struggling to find out any information about that before those projects are completed. And I suspect it may be too late to do anything about it, but I just wanted to know if any information is available about those ongoing projects elsewhere in Providence. Thanks.
I think that would be more of a VDOT where there are repaving question, which I have your email, so I can look for that and see if I can send that too. I don't recall if there were any improvements planned on those streets because that would have been in the last paving cycle, which I wasn't working on.
Yeah, last year.
I do recall something on Platten, but I would have to look in our files to see what we ended up with.
Okay.
It may not have made it to public comment, or maybe it did, and we all just don't remember.
Okay.
Last year.
Okay. My recollection is that they weren't included in last year's presentations, so I might have missed them. But okay, if I would like to know if there's some way to find out, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go back to the phone to 6725. I disabled your mic. You can press *6 to unmute. Six, 725. You press *6, that should unmute. I know the phone can be tricky. Okay, let me try going. Let's try 7572. I've allowed your mic. Press *6 to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. This is probably us not understanding, but what is the point of creating a bike lane on Ellenwood between 50 and 29 with people biking up and down the street, and then when they get to 29, where do they go? Or when they get to 50, where do they go?
Thank you for the question. I'm going to cycle back real quick to our very first, or one of our first slides. So the reason we think Ellenwood would be a good street for biking is we have this park, which is just to it's kind of the right of where the community is, and you can't get to it through the community. You've got to go up and around either on the new asphalt path that's being built in yellow, that little, or excuse me, that orange line up there, as well as the existing path. So people can bike there. We think people can bike along the service road along Route 29 to get towards the Vienna Metro, as well as people can ride over to the Pan Am Shopping Center, or use the new crosswalks to walk over there as well. And the other benefit of having bike lanes on this street is right now we have a pretty wide travel lane, which we feel anytime you have a wide travel lane, it kind of encourages people to drive very fast, and narrowing it down to is as low as we can go and still safely accommodate people who drive our school buses and that kind of thing. Having that provides some traffic calming too, so people don't speed as much as they do now.
Okay. Well, thank you for the answer. Just one more quick question. Is there a future plan to add a light at Ellenwood and 50? Just for the people from the other side of 50 to cross over and bike to the Vienna Metro?
Down at the southern end there, I don't know off the top of my head if there's a future plan.
Okay.
It would depend. Yeah, that would just depend on whether or not the signal is warranted, and then it would need to be funded. And I can say it certainly isn't funded at this time. I'm not clear on whether it's warranted, as in whether there's enough traffic volume to require a signal.
Okay. And one last thing real quick, that this is just like a dream that maybe you can just help us bring up to VDOT to consider reflective paint for Virginia roads. Because, when it's dark and rainy, it's just really hard to see the lane dividers. Just a
Oh,
comment.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Over time, so the new pavement marking should be more reflective. So when you see it go down, it should be much more reflective. But unfortunately, over time, as vehicles drive over them, it wears out, and so you'll see on some of our roads the lines aren't as easy to see. But the new crosswalks, there'll be a pretty large space for that the driver's headlights will reflect back. So those will be much more visible than even having just a regular old crosswalk.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to try Kate again. Kate, you can unmute your mic.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I can answer all the prior questions because, like I said, over 20 years. Number one, the first thing, where can you go? North, Vienna, Tyson's. Like I said, been doing it for 20 years. Put a bike on a train at Vienna Metro. Ooh, east-west, you're going to have a new trail along I-66. Let's talk about going further west. Blake Lane, Five Oaks, into the city of Fairfax. Let's talk about going south, Cross County Trail. The second part of the question was about a signal to cross Route 50. Yeah, you got it already, with a crosswalk and bus stops at Covington Street and the Cross County Trail. You can go all the way to Lake Accotink, no problem. Like I said, been doing it for 20 years. And have I missed a direction? Oh, we haven't gone east. Oh, the world is your oyster, towards the Beltway, Maryfield, Falls Church. I routinely go to, I'm missing my trivia game right now in Falls Church, and it's Seven Corners sometimes I go. I mean, it's no problem, people, really. just go. I guess I did have a question, so I hope I answered those prior questions. I am not grasping what is a high visibility crosswalk. Could we talk about that a little more, or do you have an illustration?
Sure. Yeah, and actually, it's pretty easy. They're piano bars. They look like piano bars. So here at Jersey Drive, I've kind of drawn one in, and I'll see if I can go back and find a better picture of one.
Oh, that, okay, those PM,
Yeah.
okay, like it's
A
just the white
standard
keys, not the
crosswalk
black
has
keys.
those parallel lines. See those? Yeah, if you go back to the slide at Route 29. Oh, there's the high visibility. There's a bunch of different designs. Sometimes they're zebra, quote, people call them zebra, they're diagonal. But in VDOT land, we do these, they call them continental, or as Zach calls them very beautifully, piano bars.
Without the black keys, it's just the white keys.
Right, the
Yes.
asphalt makes the black keys. I guess you could say.
Thank you.
And thank you for your directions on where to go. That's very cool.
No, not a problem.
All right, we are going to go to 0454. Uh-oh, this person dropped off again. Oh no, you're still here. Oh,
I'm still here. Okay. Hey, this is Sean again. So I just wanted to say thank
Hey,
you
Sean.
for all the responses. I really appreciate all the other people that have gone and discussed stuff. I would also like to comment in favor of the pushing VDOT to be able to implement the edge lane facilities. I think those have real promise for a place like this where there's not going to be, where I think that the through traffic on the vehicles is not going to be super expensive. And it would provide a really nice traffic calming measure while allowing lots and lots of bike availability as well. So that was the only addition that I had. I don't think I have any other questions.
Yeah, thank you for the comment, Sean. We're always trying to push VDOT to do better and greater things. There's always new guidance coming out. There's new federal guidance hopefully going to come out here in the spring, and new bikeway guidance hopefully bikeway guidance hopefully in the fall that would include features such as that. So I appreciate the comment. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, guys.
thank you. We're gonna go back to Bruce. Bruce, you're gonna unmute. Great.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Just one last comment. Appreciate Kate's comments again, and you really know that area. So if anyone, Kate or anyone else wants to contact us, both Sean and I are with Fairfax Alliance for Better Bicycling. And you can get a hold of us at info@fabb-bikes.org. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Bruce. Kate, did you have something else to say? Your hand is still up.
Oh, no, I forgot that I have to put my hand down.
That's all right. Just making sure. All right. I'm not seeing any other hands. If anyone else has any comments, please do raise your hand. Oh, I see one now. 6725. I have allowed your mic. You can press *6 to unmute. Everyone's raising their hand by accident, I think. Oh,
Hello,
no,
can
we
you
got
hear
you.
me?
We got you. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Good, okay. My name is Tom Recknagel. I live on Ellenwood Drive. And the first thing I wanted to say was, I do agree with that. The person that mentioned the parking situation on Ellenwood. All of us who live on Ellenwood do not have reserved spots. So we really depend on the parking, along Ellenwood. It's actually a security thing too. If we have to park, way down the block, you can't keep an eye on your car at night. But the other question I had is, the signs that you all put up that are out there now expire on the 13th, and you're talking, I'm sorry, expire on the 3rd, and you're talking about the work being done between the 3rd and the 13th. Are they going to put new signs up? Because
I was
everybody's going to
told.
start.
Yeah, I
Yeah, go-
apologize for that. So the reason the signs have kind of flip-flopped around is because we're trying to create some time to bring these changes to you and your neighbors and everyone else and all the other residents in the county to weigh in and give us feedback. I do apologize for that causing some inconvenience in terms of not letting you park on your street, as you noted it, as you do.
Mhm.
And I was told
Well-
the latest sign says 3rd to 13th.
Well, that's the one. They're all along Ellenwood right now, and one's right in front of my townhouse, and it definitely just says the 3rd. And already
Through the
people are
3rd,
starting
okay.
to park on Ellenwood again. You know, there's a lot of people who I guess think it's not going to happen or whatever, so they're starting to come back. And if we don't have new signs, they're not going to have any idea that the work's continuing or going to start after the 3rd. But you think they're going to put new signs up? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's definitely a best practice. We
Oh, okay.
the paving contractor tries to. It is as much an inconvenience for the paving contractor to tow someone off the street as it is for the person who needs to go and unfortunately have to retrieve their vehicle. So we try to always try to avoid doing that whenever possible.
Okay,
So-
that sounds good. As long as they're going to put new signs up, I think we'll be in good shape. And for what it's worth, I think the ideas are good. I think that I'm not sure that the bike lane would be as much of a problem as some people were saying, because first off, I don't see that many bikers, and I think the big problem along Ellenwood is lighting. If they had a little bit better lighting, put a few more, or pay more attention to the lights that they have, and keep good bulbs in them, that would really help. And but I do agree with some of the people. It is a little bit difficult when you're riding along there, because it is kind of a road that curves a little bit. But I think my only other suggestion would be if they would put up some signs to watch out for people that are biking, would probably help too, because people do come through Ellenwood pretty quickly. They're always trying to cut across between Route 50 and Route 29. One thing you never mentioned was ever putting any kind of like a 1 or 2 speed bumps along Ellenwood. So that's just a thought. And I know you're not dealing with that tonight, but
Yeah, I
That's all
think
I-
speed bumps
Thank
are
you
out of
for the
scope.
I know
comment.
VDOT has studied the speed bump thing, and there isn't sufficient traffic to justify it.
that's what I think. But there's a lot of cars that come through there really fast, at different times of the night and all. But I'm okay with it. I mean, I've lived with it for a long time, but I just thought I'd mention it because, just even one speed bump would slow people down just enough. It's a wide road and people think it's 35 and not 25 a lot of times.
Yeah, thank you for the comment. That's actually one of the reasons why we wanted to narrow the lanes to 10 feet for people driving, so that they slow down and don't go quite as fast when they have the wider lane
Yeah.
that they have now.
That's true. That might help. Okay, that's all I had. Thanks a lot.
No, thank you.
Okay.
Right, looking for any other raised hands, or we can wrap it up. I think we said 8 o'clock, so I think we can go ahead and close out the meeting. Zach, if you have want to do a final reminder of where to provide comments.
Well, yeah, I should do that. Sorry
And
about
then we
that. Let me
can
go
also let
back to
Supervisor
that.
Palchik if she has, I think she had to go with the sick child.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you all very much for providing your feedback. As of today, you have until March 3rd to provide additional feedback. March 3rd at noon. Email us at dotbicycleprograms@fairfaxcounty.gov. You can give us a call. The phone number to there. And if you send your comments by mail, please get them out as soon as possible so we can check for them on March 3rd. Thank you very much, and have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Zach and Lauren.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Dak and Lauren.
You bet. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.